first day that we went on.
Hello there.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Bernie.
Where's Tammy?
She's coming here. She's just in the other room.
He's coming.
Good.
Hi,
Yeah.
Johnny.
Hello.
Hello, Johnny.
Where are we holding here?
Eric Zion.
Page 44 of Zion.
Oh, okay, got the right place.
Hi, Sydney.
Hi, Sydney.
Sydney, how was New York? You're
Your
silent.
sound.
It was real good. Thank you, Bernie, for asking.
Good.
Are we the only ones on?
So far.
So far, yeah, Ernie sent some maps, I think, or something or other. Just
No,
now.
he sent out a text from the Maharik,
Oh, I see. I got it.
2
Okay.
pages.
What he sent? I know this by heart. What's he bothering me sending? It's
Vayehi,
Where's it from?
it's from the Mahari.
Marie something.
Murray Cohen.
Marie Craw.
Maharik.
Oh, I thought.
Never heard of him.
No?
Okay, never heard of me either.
Okay. The commentary that we're looking at.
We went to demonstration today in Beverly Hills. A lot of people, lots. Ooh,
Yeah?
nice demonstration. Yeah.
Hi, Susie. Hi, Ernie.
Any
This is,
counter ones?
just one guy driving past with a Palestinian flag, just one. But that
Should have
Yeah.
stoned the car.
he was going too fast.
Hi.
Hi, Susie.
There were demonstrations elsewhere too. In New York and New Jersey, they had demonstrations as well.
Yeah.
Is 8:30 the new time?
No, it's
No.
8 o'clock. It was just today that I had to push it off. Hi, Daron,
But you
I-
got the email, right? You got the notice that it was 8:30.
I don't think so. I don't think I'm on the list. Who does that?
It's not an
Oh,
email, it's a
Mario.
WhatsApp.
Mario,
There's no
It's a
WhatsApp,
WhatsApp.
Mario.
Oh, okay, I'm not on the WhatsApp.
put on it.
What did she say? What?
Come,
Bliss.
Not room.
Okay,
Wait, she has to be put on the.
Where was it written?
Suzanne's
No, I didn't put WhatsApp on my phone, so I'll just figure it out. Sydney saved me, thank you.
okay. So we're Shmuel Perek Zion. Last week, we read about the transference of the Aron by the Plishtim to the city of Beit Shemesh, and that the Beit Shemesh people didn't welcome it exactly the way it was supposed to be welcomed, and a terrible magefa happened in Beit Shemesh. We talked about this whole concept of sometimes what we think worshiping Hashem in a certain way is not exactly the way Hashem wants us to worship Him. So, Perek Zion begins, Vayavo anshe Kiryat Ya'arim. The people of Beit Shemesh in last week's Perek had sent messengers to the city of Kiryat Ya'arim. Would they be willing to accept the Oro? So they were, and the people of Kiryat Yarim vayalu et Aron Hashem, and they brought the Aron Hashem in an elevated way vayaviu oto el Beit Avinadav bagiva, to the home of Avinadav. Bagiva means it was in a high place. That Elazar bno Kidsho, his son Elazar, was designated and dedicated to serve the Aron, to watch it, lishmor et Aron Hashem. Rashi says Kidshu Zaminu, that means they appointed him. This was
Kiryat Yarim is Telstone. I think.
okay, which makes sense. It's not that far from, it's between Beit Shemesh and Yerushalayim.
Yeah.
And it is high up on the road.
high up on the road. Now, so number one, they were willing to accept the Aron. They have to be given, they're given credit, even though they had heard what had happened in Beit Shemesh. They weren't concerned, and because they actually dealt with the Aron the proper way. They understood that the Aron was the Makor HaBracha. The Giva was either a place in Kiryat Yarim, but some say no. They placed the Aron in the highest place in the city. And there's a Gemara in Shabbos Yud Aleph that says, Omer Rava bar Machsia, Omer Rav Chama bar Guria, Omer Rav, Kol Ir, Shegagoisea Gvoin Mibeis HaKnesses L'Sov Charva. Any city where the townspeople's homes with their roof is higher than the shul, that city is destined to be destroyed. Shenemar l'romem et beit Elokeinu ulamid et chorbotenu. The halacha is sheyesh lasum beit hakneset b'mokum gavua dehu heras kavod l'Hashem. It's a sign of kavod for Hashem. And obviously we see this from the way the people of Kiryat Yarim treated the Aron. Now, the concept that they appointed someone to do Shmira is another, and to sweep in front of it. That's what the Metzudas David says, Laharbitz. So there's a concept of Shmira b'Migdash. We know that the Ma'amados in the Beis HaMikdash, Kohanim Bavodosam, Leviim Beduchanam, which means Kohanim in the where they do the avoda, the Leviim are on the stage. Yisrael b'Ma'amadam. There were Jewish Yisraelim placed around the Beis HaMikdash as a shomer. Now, what's the point of this shmira? So, in fact, the Rambam in Hilchos Beis HaBechira, Chelek Ches, Halacha Aleph, says Shmiras HaMikdash mitzvah saseh. Afal pi shein sham pachad me'oivim, v'lo milistim. It's not what we're afraid of, enemies or robbers. Ein shmiraso ela kavod lo. The shmira is kavod for Hashem. Like the Rambam says, ein adoma platrin sheyesh alav shoimrim, lepatrin she'ein alav shoimrim. A palace that has guards, for example, Buckingham Palace. We've all been there. You've seen the guard. It's the kavod. It's an honor guard. And therefore, that's the concept that they appointed a shomer for the Aron. It's a kavod for the Aron. Some say it's to avoid hesach hadas. That's the Rosh says it has to do with, so people shouldn't take their mind on what the real function of the Beis HaMikdash is. You need shmira there. Okay. Pasuk Beis. Vayimi yom sheves ha'aron b'kiryas Ye'arim. From the day that the Aron was placed there, Vayirbu hayomim, Vayiyu esrim shana. It says the Aron was in Kiryas Ye'arim for 20 years. Vayino kol beis Yisrael achrei Hashem. So there are two concepts here. Number one, we're being told a chronology. Now, I sent, hopefully all of you received in the WhatsApp group, the Mahari Kra. It's from the Mikros Gedolos. I'd like to read that with you, where it says, Beis, Vayimi Yom Sheves Aron B'Kiryas Ye'arim. Eli Pirnes is Yisrael Arboim Shana. Eli was a shofet for 40 years. Yom Shemes Bo Eli, Vayitosh Mishkan Shila Ol Shepen Badam. We know the day of Eli's death was the day that the Mishkan was destroyed. And he brings some other psukim about that. Vayhi Aron Hashem B'Zdei Plishtim Shiva Chadashim. We know the Aron was in, after the Shiloh was destroyed, the Aron was taken captive and it was there for 7 months. Then, Vayimeyom Sheves Aron Bekiris Yaron Vayibu Hayami Vayu Esrim Shana, Say Mehem Sheva Shanim Shaya David Melech Yehuda. So we're gonna say like this. Shmuel we know that Chana came to Shmuel the day that Eli was appointed Shofet. So, and there's a 9-month pregnancy. So Shmuel is 39 years old at the death of Eli, right? Everybody's with me on that? Okay, so he's 39 years old. He takes over now. Shmuel is going to reign as a Navi for 11 years, from 39 to 50, and then 2 years with Shaul. And Shmuel dies at the age of 52. So here we are, this 20 years, Shmuel dies at year 13. He's alive for 11 years as the Navi, then 2 years with Shaul, and then he dies, 13 years. But the Sefer is telling us that the Aron is in Kiryat Yearim for 20 years. David HaMelech was anointed by Shmuel king in Yehuda before he was king for Yisrael. And so he was king in Hebron for 7 years. So 13 plus 7 is 20 years. When David HaMelech succeeded in uniting and becoming the king of all Klal Yisrael, he was king for Klal Yisrael for 33 years, and in Yehuda for 7 years. 33 plus 7, 40 years, right? David became king when he was 30 years old. He lived 70 years. So the Aron, remember, we always talked about the Aron and the Mishkan taking 2 different paths. The Mishkan and this Mahari Kroy, you can go through it. The Mishkan is moved to the city of Nov, right when the Plishtim destroy it, and it's there for 13 years. We know the 13 years. That's Shaul destroyed it in his last year of his reign, killed out all the Kohanim in Nov. Then they moved the Mishkan to the city of Givon, so where it was for 44 years. So 13 plus 44 is 57 years, is the interregnum period between Mishkan Shiloh and when Shlomo Melech builds the Beis HaMikdash. Let's go back to so David HaMelech, the first thing he does when he becomes king over Israel is he brings the Aron from Kiryat Yearim to Yerushalayim, but he doesn't build a base. It's in a tent, and it's there for 33 years. 20 plus 33 years, it's 53. Then Shlomo HaMelech builds the Beis HaMikdash in the 4th year of his reign. So 53 plus 4 is 57. That's the chronology I want. And so we see, and it's only then that the Aron was moved from the tent that David HaMelech put it in into the Beis HaMikdash. Once again, the Aron is reunited with the Mizbeach, and now Bamas are prohibited. You cannot offer Korban on a private Bama. And you can read through what I sent you, and you'll see exactly what we went through. Now, the question is, Lama hinichu es ha'aron zman harbe mokum kazeh, and lo heviu oto el nov d'sham haya mizbeach? We've described the reality of where everything was. The question is, Sep, I'm teaching a class right now. I'll have to call you back, okay? Okay. Why didn't they unite the Aron with the Mizbeach? Why did they keep them in separate places? Va'az ya mishkan sholem ima Aron v'ima Mizbeach. V'gam Shmuel hanovi lo amar lahem lo tzio Aron mekiryas Yearim el Nov o lavia Mizbeach el Kiryat Yearim. Right? They moved the Mizbeach and the Mishkan to Nov, and the Aron was left in Kiryat Yearim. So the Iyei Hayam, who's a Mefarish on Navis, wants to give a number of terutzim. She Yisrael ne'enshu al shalomichu banagos mishkan shel bnei Eli. So first of all, remember the Jewish people were really taken to task for the fact that they allowed the sons of Eli to carry on the way they did in Mishkan Shiloh. And al masha hayu oivdei avodah zarah. That this was a sin that was troubling Klal Yisrael for many years. We know Pesel Micha. Now is the time we're going to see they're going to go through a tshuva movement, and they're going to become closer to Hashem. But this doesn't just happen immediately. It's a level by level. And we'll see Shmuel's going to tell them to remove the idols from their home. And then there's going to be a reason for the Shekhinah to come back, the Mishkan with the Aron. If they would bring the Aron too soon back, the people will make a mistake, think that they've already answered all the problems that they had. They had not reached the madrega, the appropriate madrega. They don't need to do any more tshuva. So this is what the EAIM wants to say, why they delayed bringing the Aron back to the Mishkan until they were on the appropriate madrega for that to really be a reality for them. That's the way the Emes Liakov, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, explains in Emes Liakov. Okay? Now, because the word Vayaneu, Achrei Hashem, is they began to, like the Radak says, Bochu v'chazru b'tshuva shlema. We use the word nehi in Tisha B'Av. Vanehi, bechi vanehi. So they saw, like the Radak says, ki ra'u dvar ha'arnu kedushaso, v'haya lahem le'ot gadol ki Hashem hu Elokim, v'nischartu al Elokei ha'neichar shayovdim. They began having regret that they're worshiping all this avodah zarah. So now a tshuva movement, a national tshuva movement begins to develop in Klal Yisrael.
Ernie, wasn't that Shmuel Navi's mission? He went from town to town trying to have them do tshuva.
We're going to see
11 years.
Bernie, we're going to see this all in this parak. Absolutely. So Rashi again says, Vayaneu achrei Hashem, shehis ablu al maseim aroim. They were like in Avelus for all their bad deeds, v'shavu achrei Hashem, and they started doing tshuva. So, Pasuk Gimel, like Bernie says, Vayomer Shmuel el kol Beit Yisrael lemor. Im b'chol levavchem atem shavim el Hashem. If you return and do tshuva with your heart, hasiru et Elokei anechar mitochechem ve'ashtarot. Remove the false idols and the ashtaros. The ashtaros was the female fertility idol. Ve'achinu levavchem el Hashem ve'ivdu levado. Return your hearts to Hashem, worship Him only. Ve'atzel etchem miyad plishtim. This will allow Hashem to save you from the plishtim. Of course, he doesn't say here yet that he gathered them. That's why it says Kol Beit Yisrael. He went, like Bernie said, Kol Bayit Ubayit B'Yisrael Kedarko. He would go from house to house. Shayim Esavev V'Holech B'Chol Arei Yisrael Adricham B'Derech Yeshara. That's what the Kli Yakar says. Lechaz Kem U'Lesayim Otam B'Tshuvosam. Now, many of the Meforshim says, Kasha Loimer Shadayin Hayu Oidim Avodah Zarah. Because it says, Vayaneu Kol Beit Yisrael Achrei Hashem. They already started to do, if they are already now, if they're worshiping Avodah Zarah, they're not following Achrei Hashem. So he says like this, the Kli Yakar says, Hesiru Avodah Zarah mitchem, from your insides. Hainu asher betochem b'levavam dehu yetzer hara. It means remove the yetzer hara from inside of you. The Das Soifrim says, the Tziva Shmuel lahasir avodah shel hagoyim shenishar ba'aretz. We've learned many times that the Jewish people left a lot of the non-Jewish cities intact and with their avodah zarah there. So that now Shmuel is telling them, get rid of those avodah zarah. And therefore the bad influence that is influencing you will be removed. Pasuk Dalit. Vayasiru bnei Yisrael et habalim v'et ha'tashtarot vayavdu et Hashem levado. They followed Shmuel. The Medrash Mishnahs from Eliezer on the pasuk in b'chol avavchem atem shavim el Hashem asiru et Elohei nechar mitochem. V'chein matzinu b'Shmuel kiven shera'a shehi ate sarah v'asonim b'ama Yisrael. There's enemies. Think about our time. What's going on? Gozer tainis al Yisrael. He made a tainis. V'asu tshuvot tzedakah. Shene'amar vayomer Shmuel kol beis Yisrael and b'chol avavchem atem shavim el Hashem vayasiru bnei Yisrael. Mikan she'asu tshuva, and from Mikan shekaru atzara, vayishavu mayim vayishpachu l'fnei Hashem. He's going to quote the other psukim we're going to learn that they gathered, they did a tainus, they gave tzedakah, they were tzam, they did vidui, and eventually they returned all the things that they stole from people, and they were makriv a korban. We'll go back to this measure. I think we'll go back to this because we're going to learn all the psukim that'll show us all of this. So pasuk hey, vayomer Shmuel kivtzu et kol Yisrael hamitzpasa. He gathered Klal Yisrael to the mitzvah. Now, it's not far from Shiloh. This was a place that had been designated for Avodas Hashem and Kedusha. This was the place that Yoshua had defeated all the Malachim. So that's why it was a minhag to gather there. There was a Mizbeach, there was a Beis Tefillah, there was a Tshuva Gedolah in the time of Yoshua. So he gathered them. Ve'espalel ba'atchem el Hashem. And Shmuel says, I'm going to daven on your behalf.
So where is it? Where exactly is it?
The mitzvah is near Shiloh, not far.
A hilltop.
They didn't gather Benov, which was the public bama. Mishum shagam b'mei kiyum hamikdash b'Shiloh lo hayu mitasrim sham l'diyun b'nei hashakim. How come no one rak lavodas Hashem l'skatshus? It's ki mitzvah smucha l'Shiloh, says the Das HaSoifrim. It's not far from Shiloh, but it's not Shiloh. So it's in the Shomron, in that area. Listen to what Rashi says in Yirmiyahu Tesvav. Moshe u'Shmuel, shneim niskaku levakesh rachim al Yisrael. U'mitchila hechzirim lemutav. These two Nevi'im, Moshe and Shmuel, and v'achar kach yitzpalalu aleim. V'lo ala b'libam lashiva piyad shechzirim lemutav. Moshe said, Simu ish charbo al yerecha, right? He told the people, we got to wipe out all these avodah zarah nicks. And then he ground the egel azov, vayizra pnei hamoyim. V'achar kach, only then, after you get rid of your avodah zarah, el Hashem ulay achapra be'at chataschem. Moshe understood, first you have to get the sin out of their hands, then I'll go daven for you. Shmuel also said, Vayasiru bnei Yisrael sabailim, v'achar kach kivtzu es kol Yisrael mitzpasav v'espal aleichem. Harei dezeh derech shetshuva koidem l'tfila. So Moshe and Shmuel. Pasuk vav, vayikbetzu hamitzpasav, they gathered. Vayishavu mayim vayishpuchu l'fnei Hashem. They drew water and they poured it in front of Hashem. What is this? Nisuch hamayim? What is this, a korban? Vayatsumu bayomahu. They fasted. Vayomru sham chatanu l'Hashem. What is that? Vidui. Right? They said we sinned. Then vayishpot Shmuel b'nei Yisrael b'mitzvah. He judged them. And that's why we say, like the Medrash said, first, Kivtzu l'Yisrael michan shasu tshuva. Vayavdu es Hashem la'avdo mikan shekaru atzara. Vayishavu mayim vayishpuchu lefnei Hashem mikan shasu tzedakah. Ki inyan shenamar shlach lach mecha pnei hamoyim. So what, send your bread on the water is a remez for tzedakah. Tshuva tefillah tzedakah mavirnus rog zera vayatzuma vayamahu mikan shisanu. They fasted. Vayimusham chatanu mikan shizvadu. Vayishpot shmos meisol b'mitzvah mikan shechziru gzelus v'chavelus v'alein. Somebody had stolen from somebody, they returned it. Somebody had injured somebody, they paid him his injury. Later on in the pasuk test, it's going to say Vayikach Shmuel tlech alav mikan shekrivu korban. Then they were answered from Hashem.
Is this the template for how to do tshuva?
Absolutely. That's why I said, what do we say Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur?
Yeah.
Utshuva, utfila, utzdaka, mavirus rugs are same concepts. Now, what is this mayim? What is this? They shafte mayim b'sason. What is this? So the Targum Yonasan says, shvichu liban b'tiyufta k'maya kodem Hashem, which in Hebrew is shavchu liban b'tshuva k'mayim l'fnei Hashem. Pour out your heart in tshuva. It's a siman hachna, like giving in. Harei anu lefanecha k'mayim hanishpachim. Some say asu nisach hamayim, right? Nisach, every day in the Beis Hamikdash, when you brought the oila satamid, when you offered the ola as sheep, it was completely burnt. There was also a minchas nesachim offered. They brought flour and oil, and they poured wine onto the mizbeach. This was done every day. Sukkos, there was an avodah called Nisach Hamayim. They poured water. And that's the, on Sukkot, the Simchas Pesach Shoeva, the great celebrations that occur on Sukkot had to do with the pouring of the water. So, some say it was Nisach Hamayim. V'afti Nisach Avodas Kohanim. Normally, only the Kohanim do. Kan the Hayababama Hutra Fil Yidei Yisrael. Like we learned last week too, the various halachos of what you can do by a bama. An ola is normally brought a male sheep. We're going to see soon. Shmuel brought a female sheep. Freak the Meforshim. How could he bring an ola is normally male? It was a bamas yachid, and a bamas yachid it doesn't have to be a kohen. And you don't have to follow all the rules. So here, Nisach Hamayim could be done even by a Jew. Some say, the Metzudas David say, he's Sa'oiru Lishov L'Hazil Mei Dema, their tears in Tefillah L'Fnei Hashem. And in the Medrash Shmuel, Vayishavu Mayim, V'chi Mayim Shavu, Ela Malamed Sheshavu Divrei Torah Kamayim. That element, right? That it's Torah. And I wanted to learn with the group. The Yalkut Shimoni says the same thing. L'lamed sheshavu bo divrei Torah. HaTorah nimshul lechem u'lamayim. I'm reading now the Musar Nevi'im, the Rav in Denver. Torah is compared to bread and water. Kidichsiv. Hevi kol tzamei. First, it says l'chu lachmi b'lachmi, and it says havei kol tzamei l'chu l'mayim. So Torah is compared to to bread and water. The inye, and he says like this: Torah study is usually halacha and agada, meaning the law, and then there is the philosophy. That and the various agadaic stories that we learn in Torah. So he says, halacha shebetorah hema b'bchinas lechem, and the inyanei ha'agada hema b'bchinas mayim. Ki afshar lechem v'mayim shneim nechutzim l'chaya adam. Human beings need bread and water to survive. But there's a difference between them. To digest the bread is much harder for the body than to digest water. Like we see somebody who's sick, eating is much harder than drinking because he doesn't have the strength to digest it. But fluids are much easier for him. There's not as much effort. So, v'lachein in yanei halacha domim lelechem, mipnei shehem dvarim koshim she'enim miskablim b'li yagia rabba. Halacha is very difficult. You have to work on it, and it's much. It doesn't go into you as easily. Aval in yanei agadat domim lamayim, mipnei she'efshar litfos otam b'li shum yagia. Sometimes you can grab that easier. There's another dimyon between agad and mayim. Mishum de kamosha mayim mitarim. It's called dover mishemetz v'hala. Water cleans. So too agada is mitaheres es hanefesh mikol zuam v'hala. So that's just this concept of Torah as mayim.
Isn't there also a pasuk in Eicha, Shifchi kamayim libech nochach pnei Hashem? That whole imagery of pouring out, of like giving over your heart as like pouring it out. Shifchi kamayim libech.
Yeah, but that might be related to tefillah. Here we were learning how mayim is compared to Torah.
No, but I'm saying isn't a part of the whole thing here is that there's a mass tshuva.
Right. So in economy, I brought a few pshatim that the mayim refers to tears, that they're crying during tefillah, and it's hachna, and v'shavchu libam b'tshuva in economy. But I said the Navi Shmuel brought that they studied Torah. It was through Torah. Multiple pshatim in what this v'shavchu kamayim referred to. By the way, I wanted to bring from the Maharil. He says, Masha noagim leilech b'Rosh Hashanah, achar asuda etzel yomim v'naharos, lahashlich b'mtzulos yam kol chatasam. We do tashlich on Rosh Hashanah. He says, it's zecher la'akeda, she'avra Avram Avinu b'nahar ad tzavaro. Avram walking to the Akedah went into a river up to his neck. He said, Oshia Hashem. But the Iyeh Hayam wants to say, or the Maril says, that from this pasuk that we just learned, Vaishavku libem kamayim, is another reason for this minhag, why we go to a river on Rosh Hashanah. Vaishavu mayim, Vaishavku lifnei Hashem. Just like the Targum Yonason says, pour out your heart in front of Hashem. And Rashi says it's a siman achna, like we are like water in front of you. And the Radak said the same thing. So that fits with this Maril, that going to Tashlich, to a water thing on Rosh Hashanah, is an inyan of tshuva. So we have another now connection between what we're learning here, this pasuk of Vishavku Lifnei Hashem Vaishabu Mayim, to the inyan of Tashlich. One more thing that the Musar Nevi'im says. Efshar loimer the inyan shvichas halev kamayim the yesh mi sheshofech es libo betfilah b'nei hamakom aval atfilah he built in the kia. Some people daven, but they daven for things that are not correct. Ki hu omed mavakesh sheyira nekama b'chavero. He davens that he should have revenge against a friend that maybe he thinks did something bad to him. O sheyira b'mapolos soino. He wants his enemy to fail. That's what he's davening for. V'od dvarim bilti tohorim ka'ele hamitamim es hanefesh shel hamispalel. These things, if you daven for them, it's causing tumah to your own soul. However, there's a tefillah that's mitaheres es hanefesh. Everybody knows they have a Yetzer Hara. The people who daven that Hashem should help them conquer the Yetzer Hara. Who davens that, you know what? I should reach a level of Kedusha. This is a tefillah that's metayr people. Utfila kazuhi bebchinas mayim tahorim shemeviyim tahara ba'olam. This is the nice imagery there. Pasuk Zayin. Vayishmu plishtim kiskatzu bnei Yisrael hamitzpasa. So the plishtim don't know that they're gathering for a tshuva revival. They think they're gathering for war. Vayalu sarnei plishtim el Yisrael. So the governors at least are checking it out. Vayishmu bnei Yisrael vayru bnei plishtim. The bnei Yisrael hear what's going, that they're coming, and the bnei Yisrael are afraid. You see, by the way, the how low the plishtim were. They just came back from sending the Aron back, right? The Aron created such disaster in their area, but right away they're ready to fight Klal Yisrael again. It's just the very, very poor seichel.
But you also see that the lack of emunah on the part of Bnei Israel, that even though Shmuel is telling them what to do and to turn to God, they get very worried when the Plishtim start to approach.
So yes, it says Pasuk Ches, Vayomru Bnei Yisrael el Shmuel, Al tacharesh mimenu, don't be silent. Mizok el Hashem Elokeinu, cry out. V'yoshienu miyad plishtim. In a Chanami, Klal Yisrael is fearful. So Vayikach Shmuel tzlech alav echad. He took a nursing sheep. Vayaleu ola kolil. Kolil means completely burnt. Most korbanos, part of the korban was eaten. So like a korban shlomim. You shechted the animal, you received its blood in a kli, you did zrika sadab on the mizbeach. The innards and the fats were thrown on the mizbeach and burned, but the meat was eaten by the bailim. By korban chatas or korban asham, the meat was eaten by the kohanim. Only by korban ola, it's the most beloved korban for Hashem because it's completely burnt la Hashem. Nobody eats anything of it. That's what's meant by kolil. Vayizak Shmuel Hashem bad Yisrael v'yanei Hashem. So with this, like what Ellen alluded to, this process, tshuva, tzom, tainis, tefillah, tzedakah, korban, and now Shmuel davens. By the way, and now they're going to be answered. By the way, Rashi again points out nekeva haisa. This oila was a female. Normally, a korban ola has to be male. Mikan lom the Rabbi Seinu oila nekeva ksheira v'babas yachid. The Masechta Avodah Zarah, that in this 57-year period where the mizbeach and the aron are in two separate places, the bamas were permitted. It was a private bama, and you could offer an ola on such a mizbeach. You could also offer a shlamim. Let me remind you that a korban chatas could not be offered in a private bama. You had to go to Nov and offer it on the public mizbeach. The korban Pesach was like, in some ways, it's done privately, but it's a tzibur dika korban. So that had to be shechted Yud Daled Nisan in the city of Nov or Givon after it moved there. All the various, the Ola Satomid, the daily offering was done in the Mizbeach in Nov. The Korban Musaf on Shabbos, the additional Korban that was brought, Uviyom HaShabbos Shnei Chvosim, B'nei Shana, that besides the Ola Satomid, you have to bring 2 Chvosim. That's the Korban Musaf. The word Musaf means additional offering. On Rosh Chodesh, they brought a sa'ir. On the Sholosh Regalim, each Sukkot, Pesach, Shavuos has different Korbanei Musaf. That's why the Nusach, when we daven Korban Musaf on the different Yontif, we recite different Korbanos because they were different. On Sukkot, there was 13, 12, that added up to 70. On Pesach, every day the same Korban Musaf. Shavuos was the Shtei Chvosim. Listen to what the Radak says here. Ki mishacharav mishkan Shiloh, ubo lahem lenov, hutru abomas kozman shai omed benov givon ad shnivne beisolom shenesru. Like we said, v'shuv lo haya lahem heter. After that, there's never a heter to do bomas yochid. V'amru ein aboma nitra ela yedei navi. The bama, you have to be given the permission by a navi. Ki Shmuel hele kan rishon b'bomas yochid mishacharav mishkan Shiloh. This pasuk that we just read is a very momentous pasuk. It's the first time that an individual offered a korban on a bomas yochid, and it was done by a navi. Since it was done by a navi, now we have permission to do it. If the Navi Shmuel had not done it, we wouldn't have had permission to do it. V'chein begilgal, Yoshua hela b'bamas yochid rishon shenemar az yivne Yoshua. Let's remember, when Yoshua went in with Klal Yisrael, the Aaron went into battle with them. So the Mizbeach was set up in Gilgal. Again, there was a separation between the Mizbeach and the Aaron. So the Bamas were permitted. And there also it says, Yoshua, az yivne Yoshua Mizbeach. So the same din, it was Yoshua, who was a Navi, gave them the heter during those 14 years before the Mishkan was built in Shiloh to offer korbanos. So Harela Madnu, says the Radak, Shlosha halachos b'bama ktana. Ein bama muteres el al yedei navi. And zar makriv b'bama ktana. A non-Kohen could do the avodah there. In the Beis HaMikdash, it has to be a Kohen. And olas nekeva ksheira b'bama ktana. You could offer a female ola there. Pasuk Yud. Vayishmuel mala oilo plishtim nikshu lemilchama b'Yisrael. The plishtim now are coming to do battle. Vayarem Hashem b'kol gadol bayom hahu al plishtim vayu meim. Huge noise, and they were all confused. That's the concept of vayu meim. He created chaos, like vayaham. As Yosh he did it to the Egyptians. Vayam esmar kavosa. The same thing happened to the Mitzrayim. Vayinakfu l'fnei Yisrael. Bnei Yisrael were able to defeat them. Vayitzu anshe Yisrael min hamitzpah vayirdifu es plishtim. And the Bnei Yisrael chased them. Vayakuma mitachas lebeis kar, all the way to the Beis Kar, Shem Mokomhu, which was a place where they chased them to. Vayikach Shmuel even achas. Vayasem ben hamitzpah ben hashem. He placed it in the mitzvah, near a rock. Vayikra et Shema even haezer. Vayomar adhein azarun Hashem. Here, Hashem helped us, a way to remember what had happened.
Were the Bnei Yisrael prepared for a war at that time?
They probably were not, but but once the Plishtim came, they obviously, because they had done tshuva and Hashem had answered them, they were able to defeat them. By the way, Chazal say, Medrash Shmuel, Shalosh milchamos shel mehuma. This language of Vayaham, on Rav Abba Bar Kana, Shalosh milchamos shel mehuma yiftiach HaKadosh Baruch Hu shel oisel Yisrael. Ushloish tana salem, arishoyne b'mei Yoshua. Vayahamem Hashem lifnei Yisrael. That's Yoshua Yud. Hashniya b'mei Sisra. Vayam Hashem es Sisra. Vashlish b'mei Shmuel. Like the pasuk we just learned. Vayishmuel ma'ala vayarem Hashem b'kol. Rabbi Simon added vayam es machane Mitzrayim. And then in the future, in the Navi Zechariah says, V'haya bayom hahu tiyeh mehumas Hashem rabba bahem. It's Hashem, we're going to have our enemies also be defeated this way as well. My page is just crazy today. Pasuk Yud Gimel, Vayikanu Aplishtim, they surrendered. V'lo yasfu od lavo b'gvul Yisrael. They never threatened, as long as Shmuel is alive, they're never going to threaten the borders of Eretz Yisrael. Vatihi yad Hashem b'plishtim kol yemei Shmuel. Vatoshavna ha'orim, asher lachu plishtim me'et Yisrael, me'ekron v'ad gat v'gvulan, yitzil Yisrael miyad plishtim. Yehuda had these cities in their area. The plishtim had conquered them. Now we got them back. Ekron got, now we're going to lose them. When Shmuel dies, right, because David HaMelech is going to fight the plishtim, right? The Goliath is a plishti. So we're going to go through battles with the plishtim again, but not during the life of Shmuel. Vahi shalom ben Yisrael uvein ha'emori. Not only that, but even the other nations who were living with Klal Yisrael, who remember they also made sure they were afraid of, because they saw what Klal Yisrael was able to do to the plishtim. They also made peace. We had a better peace with them. The Tosefta in Sota says, "Kozman shai Shmuel kayim, hayu plishtim noiflim biyad Yisrael. Nishemei Shmuel ma'oimer, vayom Shmuel," and immediately after, "Vayitbetzu plishtim es machaneim litzval lachamim Yisrael." Immediately after Shmuel's death, the plishtim start up with us again.
Ernie, can I add something?
Please.
The Mayam Loe says that before Shmuel died, he appointed his sons in his place, but they did not judge the people well as their father had, and people returned to their evil ways. And then the Pelishtim again invaded the borders of Israel.
There you go. There you go. The pasuk that relates to that, Bernie, is the pasuk Tesvav. Vayishpot Shmuel et Yisrael kol yemei chayav. He judged Klal Yisrael his whole life. Now, we know that he came to Shiloh when he was 2 years old, but we learned tonight, he only became the Navi when he was 39 years old, and he died when he was 52. So he only judged the people for 13 years.
How old was he for this war with Plishtim?
This is 39. He's 39. Just in the
39
beginning
at this point.
Yeah, he's 39.
So 13 years.
So the Radak says, Sheshmuel hoyre miyom shehitchil haros ad sof yomish mamish. Remember, even at the age of 2, remember he debated with Eli what you should do with the korban. Right? So he was paskening halacha all the way through. Then he says, Vayishpot Shmuel et Yisrael kol yemei chayav, kol b'gematria is 50. Right? He lived 52 years. So he came to Eli when he was 2 years old. So he was already pasking halacha then. Remember, the mother was concerned. He was moira halacha lifnei rabbi. So that's the pshat there. But then there's another medrash in B'midbar Rabbah that asks the same question, that Eli was the shofet for 40 years. So he only was shofet for 13 years, 10 years, 11 years. What do you mean all of his life? Elo Omer HaKadosh Baruch Hu, says the Medrash, Hareini machtiv alav kol yemei chayav, she'yikabel schar kol yomim shahaya ba'olam. V'af shevet Levi, Omer HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'Moshe, she'yimnei son mi ben chodesh v'mala. When you did the census, we just read the census last week in Parshas Naso. When do you start counting the Bnei Levi? When they're a month old. So in essence, Shmuel is given credit as if he started even from Mimeimo, and certainly when he was a month old. Because they already started to be processed as interns in the house of Levim when they were very young.
So this is unique to Shmuel, right?
He's given credit as if he did it his whole life.
I'm saying because no one else does it, say Kol Yimei Chayav, it tells you the years.
Right. And the high commercial v mosru nafsham al avodas hakodesh ulufiv nechshav ki ilu asu ken kol yemei chayim because they're counted from there a month. Kain Shmuel mosru nafsham mishpat Yisrael.
But Shmuel, he's really not known as a shofet. He's
Why
really
not?
known as a Navi.
Okay, but you see, Shmuel is an amazing person. I mean, this he as we learned tonight, you have Moshe Rabbeinu, and then you have Shmuel Hanavi. That's where he is in the pantheon. Now he's the shofet. He returns them all to do tshuva. He's the Navi. He's going to establish all the basic halachas that we have. You know, Beis Dino Shel Shmuel. We're going to see the major debate. Look at the pasuk. The halach midei shana b'shana, v'savav beit el v'agilgal v'amitzpah. He was like the traveling judges that used to be in Lahavdil, you know, in America. He went to the people. V'shafat et Yisrael et kol ha'makamot ha'eleh. U'tshuvaso ha'ramoso. He would return to his house in Ramah. Ki sham beso. V'sham shafat et Yisrael as well. V'yiven sham mizbeach l'Hashem. There was a mizbeach there as well. In the Gemara Shabbos says, Manu Mekayim Vayatu Achrei Abotza. There were judges who went after bribery. Shelo asu kamaise aviyim shaya Shmuel. This is taught what Bernie was talking about, his sons. Shmuel's sons did not judge like their father. They went after Shoichad and Botza. Shaya Shmuel at Tzadik mechazer b'chol makomos Yisrael v'danu som bareim, like our pasuk. V'hem lo asukein eliyashvu bareim k'nei laharbo schar lechazaneim. By staying in their town, people had to come to them. And look at what the Medrash says. Shamoshim shesoichin osam leilech lazmin sekronudan. Everybody had a shamis. Everybody had a gabbai. You had to bribe the gabbai. You had to bribe the shamis to get in to see them.
Unfortunately, just like the sons of Eli. Same story.
Like a lot of rebbes.
Then it says, Tona Rabbanon, Shas Ptiras Chacham, Kolam Chayavin Bespedo. When a Talmud Chacham passed away, the whole nation has to be maspid him. It says when Shmuel dies, Shmuel meis, vayispedu lo kol Yisrael. Uksiv, vayom Shmuel, vayikatsu kol Yisrael, vayispedu lo. Mida Omer kol Yisrael, lav shmami not a nikbetsu. I mean, why do you have to say they gathered? You already said kol Yisrael. Ella, vachu bayaros. They also cried for him in the cities, the villages. Omru v'chizek kvodo shel Shmuel sh'ayam alech mi'ir li'ir u'medina le'medina l'lamdenu Torah mar. Nobody else did that. So Shmuel is really seen as a very special person in the history of Klal Yisrael, who created the Tshuva movement, went from town to town, and did all of that.
Were most Nevi'im like itinerant, like traveling from place to place?
Remember, the Gemara differentiates him from Elisha Hanavi, the famous Shunamite woman, who was a great woman, who set aside for Elisha a mita, kisei, shulchan, and a menorah in an attic. And she was the achsanya for Elisha. What we learned from there, Elisha didn't go to everybody. He went to chashuvim, while Shmuel went to everybody. And there's a debate whether that was a good thing or not a good thing, but you see he had a different approach. Omer Abai v'tem Rav Yitzchak haroitz l'onos Yahana Kelisha. Somebody doesn't want to benefit as much. Al Yanek Shmuel Ramosi. Shenemar utshuva sara masa kisham beso. Ami of nachdan shekol makom shahalach sham beso imo. We'll have a little bit more to say about that maybe next week.
Is the fact that he's a Nazir just like Shimshon, like Nazirus Shimshon is from birth?
He was
Maybe
not
that
a he was
also
not a
qualifies-
Nazir.
Also qualifies his level of his exalted level. That from the time of his birth he was special.
No, but Shmuel was
Dedicated. Chana dedicated him.
yeah, but Shmuel was not a Nazir like Shimshon. He didn't have
He wasn't Nazir.
He was.
Who, Shmuel?
no.
No.
Chana was told to be careful what she ate during the pregnancy. There was no Naziris like by Shimshon.
Where do you see that, Bernie? That he was a Nazir?
No, because Bernie's remembering that Chana was told
No, but Hannah was told what to eat, yes.
what to eat, but there was no Naziris by
She told what to eat.
No, because she wanted to dedicate Shmuel to that thing.
Okay, any other, I think this is really the parak of Shmuel, where we see how he's unique and his excellence and how, huh? Yeah. And we'll see more. Next week's parak is when he's going to give Klal Yisrael Musar, a very strong Musar Shmuel. So we're going to see that next week. Other comments about this week's
the Plishtim is apropos, they don't give up on us.
there you go.
That's the comment of the week, man, because they just don't, just bone in the throat. They just
It's the truth.
keep on coming back, man. We need Shmuel to daven for us, to get rid of them for us. Crazy.
Well, we have to do tshuva first, just like it
That's
says.
true, Harold.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct. That's not happening so quickly with the,
Okay.
all right. Shkoyach, Ernie.
Thank you
Good
very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good to be back.
Thank you.
Good night.
We had,
Have a good week, everyone.